Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So as I said this morning, we're coming up close to Thanksgiving. It's only a few days away. And so we are continuing looking at this theme of unexpected gratitude in the Word, where people offer thanks and praise to the Lord in situations that we might say, if I was in their shoes, I'm not sure I would be offering thanks to the Lord. And last week with this theme, we looked at the story of Jonah and how Jonah, even in the darkest part of his life, after he had been thrown off of the boat that he was in and cast into the sea and swallowed up by the belly of this fish, and he didn't know yet whether he was going to survive or not, he offered thanks to the Lord in that place. And it showed us that we can show gratitude to the Lord even through the darkest trials that we go through, because the Lord is able to bring good out of everything that we experience, the good and the bad. Now, this week is a very different story, because this isn't a story about someone giving thanks when they are in the darkest part of their lives. In fact, this week, we're looking at a story of someone who gets what they want, someone who asks the Lord for something, and the Lord responds by giving it to them. And this is the story of Hannah giving birth to Samuel that we read in the first part of our service. And so Hannah was someone who wasn't able to have children. And this was something that really upset her. She really wanted to be able to have a child of her own. And so she went to the Lord and she prayed. And it says that as she prayed, she wept bitterly. And she prays to the Lord and she says, Lord, if you remember me and if you give me a son, then I will dedicate him to you, and he will serve you all the days of his life. And after she prays this to the Lord, it says that the Lord remembered her, and she conceived, and she gives birth to a son and calls him Samuel. Now, if the story were to end here, we would all say, yeah, this is a great story where obviously you would want to give thanks to the Lord for him answering your prayer and giving you what we asked for. But then Hannah has to follow through with her end of the deal, her end of the agreement that she made with the Lord, which at that point was a very literal agreement, which was that she was going to dedicate Samuel to the Lord, which meant that literally she was going to take him to the temple and leave him there, where he would be raised and brought up by Eli and shown how to minister to the people of Israel, and that he would end up becoming a prophet of the Lord, someone who hears the word of the Lord and shares it with people. And so she waited until he was weaned. It wasn't, she didn't take a newborn kid, but it's probably somewhere on the age 2, 3, or 4. I mean, this is still a little kid, preschool age. And she brings him to the temple, and they sacrifice to the Lord like they always do, and they worship the Lord. And then they take Samuel to Eli, and they leave him there with him. And it says that he ministers to the Lord all the days of his life there under Eli. Now, this would be an incredibly difficult day for any of us. If any of us were in Hannah's shoes, this would be a tough thing to do. And some of us might still be able to do it. Some of us might say, I made this agreement with the Lord. This is what I have to do. I have to leave my son here. This is what's best. But even still, I doubt any of us on that day, when it comes time to leave our preschool-age child and walk away from him, that we would feel in the mood to offer gratitude and praise to the Lord. And yet, this is exactly what Hannah does. After she leaves Samuel there, after she takes him to the temple, she offers this prayer to the Lord. And I want to pick this up, and I want to read this now. And I want us to listen to Hannah's words here, thinking of this being the context in which she prayed it. And think of the things that she says here. This is the second chapter of the first book of Samuel. And Hannah prayed and said, my heart exults in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty are broken, but the feeble bind in strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread, but those who were hungry have ceased to hunger. The barren has borne 7, but she who has many children is forlorn. The Lord kills and brings to life. He brings down to Sheol and raises up. The Lord makes poor and makes rich. He brings low and he exalts. He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. He will guard the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked shall be cut off in darkness. For not by might shall a man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Against them he will thunder in heaven. The Lord will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king and exalt the horn of his anointed. Then they went home to Ramah, and the boy was ministering to the Lord in the presence of Eli the priest. So this prayer that Hannah offers has a lot of stuff in it. And while she doesn't use the word thanksgiving or thanks the way that Jonah did when he was in the belly of the fish, it's clear that this is a prayer of praise to the Lord, talking about the power of the Lord and all of the things that he provides for everyone on the planet. And so in this place in her life, when she has to give away the only child that she's ever had, the child that she prayed for and wept for bitterly, she takes time to give thanks to the Lord when the time comes to give him away. Now, what is the message that's here in this prayer? I think it is that when we give our gratitude to the Lord, that it's actually not about thanking the Lord for all of the things that we have. It's not saying, Lord, thank you that I get to have all of these amazing things. But actually, when we show gratitude and we give thanks to the Lord, it is an opportunity to give back to him, to dedicate ourselves in service to the Lord, and to use the blessings and the joys that he has given us to help serve his purpose. Now, with this in mind, I want to turn now to the teachings of the new church and share a passage from the work Arcana Celestia that talks about the power of humility, worship, and thanksgiving, and why the Lord asks us to give these things to him. This is from Arcana Celestia, number 5957. It says, "It is true that the Lord demands humility, worship, thanksgiving, and much else from a person which seem like repayment, so that his gifts do not seem to be free. But the Lord does not demand those things for his own sake. For the divine receives no glory at all from a person's humility, worship, or thanksgiving. It is utterly inconceivable that any self-love should exist within the divine, which would cause him to require such actions for his own sake. Rather, they are required for a person's own sake. For if someone possesses humility, they are able to accept good from the Lord, since in that case they have been separated from self-love and its evils, which stand in the way of their accepting it. Therefore, the Lord desires a state of humility in a person for that person's sake, because the Lord can flow in with heavenly good when that state exists in them. The same applies to worship and thanksgiving." And so this passage is saying that on the surface, having to give thanks to the Lord for all the things that he gives us almost makes it feel like the things he gives us aren't really gifts, right? You know, he gave Hannah what she asked for, but it almost feels like, well, there was a condition that she can only have a son if she gives him away to the Lord. She can't raise him. She can't have him for her entire life. And the Lord will only benefit us if we go to him and worship him and give thanks to him for the things that he gives us. And on the surface, that can make it look like the Lord is selfish. He wants, like, what he's looking for, and the reason he benefits us is because we can then give it back to him. You know, and there's people that I know who have had this conversation with me outside of the new church, that there's people who believe that the reason that the Lord created the human race was just for his own glory. He created people so that they could glorify him and worship him and praise him. But in the new church, we know, and from this passage that I just read, we know that there is no element of self-love in the Lord. Everything he does is for the sake of others. Everything the Lord does and everything the Lord asks of us is actually for our own benefit. And so, when we give him humility, when we worship the Lord, or when we offer him thanks and gratitude for the things that he's given us in our lives, we actually benefit from that. Because in giving thanks to the Lord is a recognition that the reason we have what we have isn't because of our own merit. It's not that I have these good things because I deserve these good things, or that I've done all the work and I've earned all of this. But it's a recognition that actually everything good that I have has come to me from the Lord. And that mindset separates us from the love of self. It separates us from our own pride and our own ego. And that's what opens the door for the Lord to be able to flow in with heavenly goodness. And so what that means is that when we give gratitude to the Lord and we say thanks to the Lord, it allows the Lord to then flow through us more clearly. And what that does is it helps us serve other people better. It'll help us have better relationships with the people in our lives. It'll help us grow closer to the Lord and be able to serve the Lord better. And so this is our big message, and this is our takeaway this week. Our spiritual task is to take a look at the blessings that we've been given from the Lord. And you can do this with as many as you want, but start with just one. Think of something that the Lord has given you in your life that you can be grateful for. And offer thanks to the Lord this week, leading up to Thanksgiving, for this thing that he has given you. But then I would invite all of us to ask ourselves the question of, how can I then take this blessing that the Lord has given me and use it to serve and love other people? How can I take the gifts that the Lord has given me and then dedicate them back to him the way that Hannah did with her son Samuel? Because when we do that, when we are willing to not just receive from the Lord and be grateful for all that we have, but when we open the door to say, how can these blessings and these gifts be used to love the Lord and love my neighbor, that is how we will receive more blessings from the Lord. That's how we will receive his love and his goodness flowing into us. And that's what will lead us to a life of happiness, a life of gratitude, and a life of peace. Amen. Please rise for a